Hello, my name is Jouni Vilkka and this is my channel TFF Teacher from Finland. This video is a very quick summary of the basics of philosophical ethics. I will just quickly run through everything I have been explaining in this series, the playlist Introduction to Ethics. The purpose is to recap the series or give you an overview of the whole field without getting into any of the details. First, the term ethics usually means philosophical ethics, meaning rational views about what is good or evil, right or wrong, and how we should or should not act in general or in specific situations. The word morals usually refers to views about the same things but based on tradition, religion, the authority of one's parents, and so on. Ethics is one of the main branches of philosophy, part of what is called practical philosophy, because it deals with how we ought to live our lives as opposed to theoretical philosophy, which includes the other main branches of philosophy, namely epistemology and metaphysics. See my playlist Introduction to Philosophy and Critical Thinking for a whole series on philosophy in general, or the relevant playlist for short videos if you prefer. Ethics can be divided into four main sections: metaethics, normative ethics, philosophy of life, and applied ethics. I will now briefly explain the main contents of each section. If you're still watching, you should consider subscribing and clicking the thumbs up button. Metaethics is the most abstract level of philosophical ethics. It is the meta level discussion about what ethics and morals are fundamentally about, what the concepts of ethics and morals even mean, and so on. For example, it includes axiology, the study of values and their hierarchy. It also includes the analysis of different views of humanity, because one's view of humanity significantly influences one's ethical views. Those who see humans as fundamentally altruistic will emphasize different points of ethics than those who believe humans to be driven by egoism. Also, whether you think humans are capable of rationally pondering different options and making decisions, or believe them to be fundamentally irrational, being led by emotions or other causes besides reason, will greatly influence how you see morality and the possibility of ethics. It may be that you see humans as constrained by our essential nature, or by fate, or you may see us as being at least able to break free of such things, or even doomed into such freedom, whether we like it or not. Whatever your views, they will be clearly connected to your ethical theories. This leads us to the main part of metaethics, the different theories of metaethics. These are the different views about what we mean by words like good and evil, what is the basis of such values. For example, supernaturalism is the view that they owe their existence to a supernatural origin, such as God, while naturalists more or less equate values with natural facts or experiences. Constructivists, on the other hand, see values as being social constructs that depend on the cultures that create and sustain them. Emotivists don't believe values to be more than expressions of emotions, so that by calling Nazis evil, I merely express my dislike of them. Similarly, prescriptivists would explain that by calling Nazis evil, I am prescribing certain behaviors, trying to influence others, and that is all such moral talk is. Some of these aforementioned views can also be called relativism, which comes in many varieties. What they have in common is the view that moral values are not objective, they do not exist independently of the people forming opinions, the cultures they live in, and so on. Those who believe the contrary view, that there actually are moral truths, that values actually exist independently of our opinions, are called realists. Normative ethics is probably the most well-known part of ethics. It is all about deciding on ethical norms or rules of conduct. Most normative theories fall into one of four main types. Deontological ethics is about duty. Immanuel Kant is famous for his view that merely by following the dictates of our own reason, we will see the truth of the categorical imperative, which tells us how we ought to decide. The idea is that we should do what everyone should do in the same situation, because we are all bound by the same duty. Consequentialism is the view that the rightness of an act depends not on a duty or intent of an action, but on the consequences of the action. The most popular form of consequentialism is utilitarianism, which posits that what matters is the utility or usefulness of an act. This usefulness is assessed by looking at how much pleasure and pain results or can be expected to result from the act for everyone concerned. The idea is to find the act that causes the greatest amount of total good for the greatest number. Of course, there are also different qualities of pleasure, so things can get more complicated than you might initially think. Contractarianism is the view that our norms are based on social contracts, which result in rights and responsibilities for those bound by such contracts. Of course, these contracts are often implicit, so that by participating in society, you implicitly accept the rules of society, for example. Liberalism, for example, requires that you accept that your freedom is limited by the rights of others to not be harmed. The implication is that everyone should be free to live as they please, and no one should be harmed without proper justification. Virtue ethics is mostly associated with Aristotle. It focuses on the kind of person you are and want to be. Instead of trying to assess the goodness of individual acts, you can assess the virtuousness of the person, perhaps yourself, acting in such a manner. Virtue ethics teaches you to live virtuously, so that in the end you can be said to have lived a good life. This brings us to the next section of ethics. Philosophies of life are no longer about moral judgment or theories about the basis of ethical thinking. Instead, their purpose is to teach you how to live well. What that means depends on the philosophy in question. For Aristotle, a virtuous person will live a good life. By avoiding extreme ways of living, it is possible for one to achieve happiness or eudaimonia. It is not some fleeting emotion, but rather an assessment of the whole life at its end. The Hellenistic schools had various different ideas about what happiness is and how it can be reached. The Cynics thought it important to stop desiring things and to be satisfied with what you have in yourself, to not be at the mercy of things external to your own mind. The hedonists, of which the Epicureans were the more refined form, sought pleasure and, of course, avoided suffering or displeasure. Especially for the Epicureans, this didn't mean much more than enjoying simple things, such as being left in peace, enjoying the company of friends, eating simple meals, and so forth. The skeptics found it most important to avoid believing things, because especially strong beliefs tend to rouse strong emotions, which is in itself already a harm, a disturbance of the peace of mind. But it also hampers critical thinking and leads to other problems. At the least, those beliefs are likely to be false anyway. Accepting one's uncertainty and learning to live with it shields one from the passions caused by all those false beliefs. The common theme in the Hellenistic schools was the avoidance of emotional disturbance. They all seem to have sought ways to endure the hardships life throws at you in slightly different ways. The most popular Hellenistic philosophy of life in the Roman Empire was Stoicism, which also taught ways to achieve peace of mind and tranquility. Renaissance humanism developed into the Enlightenment of the 18th century. The scientific revolution inspired thinkers of the time to discard the oppressive authority of religion, and free thinkers were finally able to even criticize religious dogmas and demand that humans be freed from the shackles of religion. Science can tell us how the world works, and reason can tell us how we should live. Romanticism and nihilism rose to oppose rationalistic thinking and eventually gave rise to existentialism. Existentialists mostly emphasized our freedom and responsibility, which force us to take charge of our own lives. The last section of ethics is called Applied Ethics because it is about applying ethical thinking to actual problems in the world we have to live in. There is practically no end to a list of topics discussed in applied ethics, but some idea of the scope and kind of topics discussed can be gained by looking at what I have introduced in this series previously. Environmental ethics, animal rights, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, AI, science, technology, sex, sexuality, gender, professional ethics, and business ethics. This is just a sample of important topics also discussed among the general public at present. I have now given a brief overview of the various views in ethics, and hopefully you have realized that there are many different conflicting views that are still being debated at present. That is to say, there is no simple answer to questions like, what does good mean? What should I do in this situation? How should I live my life? Or is suicide wrong? But the lack of a single, obviously superior view does not mean that these conflicting views are all useless. On the contrary, while no single theory or view seems fully satisfactory, they all, or at least most of them, seem to be making good, important points. We should learn from all of them and keep them all in mind when making decisions or pondering ethical problems we might encounter. It may also be useful for us to think of the example of others. We can recognize and respect ethical heroes whose example can guide, inspire, and motivate us on our own journeys. I have covered all of these things in the course of this video series, which can be found in the playlist Introduction to Ethics on my channel. The contents of this series can also be found on the website I made for this course. See the link in the description below. It would be nice if you could help the right people find my channel. If you know someone who's interested in philosophy, please tell them about TFF, Teacher from Finland. If you wish, you may follow me on various social media platforms. Links to my social can also be found in the description below. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back on my channel soon. Bye! If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe, and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.